talked about the double talk, the hypocrisy coming out of Obama's White House. They focus on telling us to have better nutrition for everyone, which I've spent my life trying to accomplish for the world. And then they serve bratwurst, pizza, and ice cream for themselves and their friends during the Super Bowl. Joining us now for his look at this is Robert Scott Bell.
Thanks again, Michael. It's great to be back with you and the Savage Nation audience. Let loose on a little bit of health freedom and healing in ways that maybe even the federal government doesn't like us to know about. That's what we're going to do here, and I appreciate the opportunity. This past weekend was interesting because they just released on Monday these new dietary guidelines for all Americans. Yet, if you reviewed like you did the Super Bowl menu at the White House, you have to call this the diet of hypocrisy that's gone out there. Now, interestingly enough, I grew up in an era, Michael, where we had 4 basic food groups. You remember those? And in my life, they weren't what you think they were. In my life, I grew up in a generation that started eating the wrong things. So my upbringing, we got the 4 food groups, basically pizza, hot dogs, Coca-Cola, and even throwing some potato chips. Those were 4 of them, okay? I admit it.
Well, sounds like the cardiotoxic diet I ate as a kid.
Because of that, I was ill for much of my life. My parents didn't know better. We grew up, doctors in the family, the drug reps in the family, and so you got a symptom, you got a drug. There wasn't really anything focused on nutrition, as the reason why, as a child, I had fallen ill into, believe it or not, chronic illnesses as a child, which it shouldn't befall any child. Those used to be the diseases of old age, and now, of course, when we talk about so many of these diseases, even diabetes, they talk about the increase in diabetes, and you think, okay, all right, more old people are getting diabetes because they're eating wrong and they're doing all the wrong things. But it turns out, Michael, used to be the standard age, if you will, mean age was around 70 for getting diabetes. Now it's dropped to about 40.
Well, how is that possible?
The only way it's possible is, of course, lots of young people are now developing diabetes. And in fact, it's true, the highest rate of growth of diabetes is happening among preteens, children as young as 5 years of age. And I've talked about the Nixon's war on cancer, how we got more cancer in almost 40 years since then. And I've joked that the reason we're getting more cancer in children, because it's happening in children too, is that children are living longer. Now they've actually used that argument in diabetes. They're actually saying that, people are living longer.
Wait. Hold on a minute. You can't be serious.
I'm telling you, this is coming right from their own articles and scientific journals. People are living longer, so there's more diabetes.
Oh, my God.
How do they explain kids are the greatest majority of the new diabetes cases? Because, 5-year-olds are living longer than 5-year-olds used to in the distant past. Of course, it's more absurdity, courtesy of the federal government and the pharmaceutical industrial complex.
Right.
So some of these new guidelines, again, Michelle Obama not paying attention other than to lash out against what Walmart sells you or what you can get at a fast food restaurant. I may not decide to eat there, but I defend people's freedom to eat how they like. But in the so-called prevention of overweight and obesity, they're always focusing, you notice this, Michael, only on calories. Calories in, that's what makes you fat. And then they also say, stay away from fat. When you and I know, and a lot of the Savage Nation audience knows, that fat is not evil. Fat is not bad. In fact, fat is essential for good health, even more so in children. And when I can't stand it when the federal government is pushing, fat-free foods on kids. I mean, these kids need more fat than adults for the development, their normal, healthy development.
Mm-hmm.
Neurological, endocrine. I mean, these kids need hormones, for goodness sake, as they're growing. And you wipe out the saturated fat, you wipe out the omega-3 essential fats. I mean, you target cholesterol. Not you, Michael, of course, but, I mean, these dietary guidelines coming from the feds. They're saying consume less than 300 milligrams per day of dietary cholesterol, neglecting the fact that even if you eat a high cholesterol diet, it impacts on your cholesterol levels minimally because most cholesterol is produced endogenously. Because the liver needs it. The liver is critical. It produces the cholesterol because, as you've said so many times on your show, it's a vital precursor for hormones like testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen. It's a protective mechanism so you can even live long enough to have a heart attack.
Exactly.
For goodness sake, we're not endorsing heart attacks, but the reality is, without cholesterol, we would die before we'd have any sign or symptom because of the oxidative damage, the inflammation within the cardiovascular system. So, again, big surprise, the feds get the dietary guidelines absolutely wrong. You want to be unhealthy? Listen to what the feds tell you to eat. Also, I wanted to reiterate that the fat issue, even when we talk about saturated fat is not unhealthy in and of itself. It's what's in the saturated fat that can be problematic. And people that don't concern themselves with the way, for instance, those that eat animal protein, if you don't give a flip how the animals are raised, you're largely ignorant of the fact that what you put into your body does matter. You know, if you want to eat animal protein, then make sure, for goodness sake, that the animals are not hopped up on steroids or growth hormones from synthetic manufacturers around the world, also not pumped full of antibiotics just to fatten them up and bring them to market faster. We already have enough antibiotic-resistant strains of microbes that were created by man, not by God, and they're only making it worse because the majority of antibiotics used are actually not used on humans, but in the growth, the artificial growth of animals sent to slaughter. And, of course, those fats are loaded with nasty stuff. If you're feeding these animals crap, what do you expect you're going to get when you eat them?
Exactly.
You know, heavy metals, pesticide residues, these things matter. They impact negatively on the, let's say, the function or the even presence of hormones and enzymes, the vital elements necessary for healthy life and graceful aging. You know, it begs the question, all of this misinformation that's purposefully perpetrated upon the American people by the federal government, telling us what we can and can't eat, what's good for us, what's not, and they don't even know how to eat in Washington, D.C. And I have to ask the question, you know, what is the end result? Not only of the promotion, but of Americans eating junk, eating food that you may perceive to be healthy, but it's loaded with things that are not life-sustaining. And, of course, for me, in my mind, I look at, okay, what is it doing and why is it doing it? And anything that, let's say, facilitates disease in the body, weakens us, weakens our mind, weakens our ability to be human, we are much more malleable as a species, as a people, as the American people have put up with so much garbage from the federal government, from Obamacare to other unconstitutional growth of government, Department of Education. I mean, it used to be the Republicans were actually wanting to abolish it. And we even go into the Twinkies of the money with the Federal Reserve printing up paper like, you know, they're going to wallpaper the planet so we can all have more money. And, of course, it only makes the money we work hard to get worth less and less. We never catch up with the real inflation, which, by the way, the brilliant Bernanke from his helicopter can't even acknowledge that inflation is not the rise in prices but the increase in the money supply. Much like the increase in the access to junk food, for which Michelle Obama says, oh, we don't want you to have that, will result, of course, in other deficiency diseases because many of these foods, let's face it, it plain doesn't contain the vitamins, minerals, and trace minerals that was once in food grown in healthy soil. I mean, we have to go to sea vegetation, seaweed, to get our minerals now. At least it's still there. But we've got other crazy ideas coming out of the feds, and again, they're all about calories, never, acknowledging the impact of eating calories that are devoid of minerals, like, for instance, chromium. We've talked about this before, Michael. If you eat refined carbohydrates, I mean, a lot of the empty calories, the sugars, it's not just that may be bad, but the fact that they don't have the chromium molecules, particles, present with the sugars. And chromium, of course, facilitates the use of insulin, facilitates the transmission, if we will, of energy in the body. And, of course, hypoglycemia, which is resulting from a lack of chromium, much less the diabetes that is also evidence of a lack of chromium because it's been refined out of the food. We have a serious consideration here is to say, why is the government not saying, hey, we need to, remove some of these refined foods and acknowledge that we need these minerals in the food.
Oh, right.
And which leads me to discovery of a bioweapon.
Really?
I recently discovered a bioweapon that the federal government knows about and that every American has that could turn back the tides of the artificial growth, the cancer of big government, unconstitutional government, and it relates to this idea of the federal government purposefully wanting us to be weak and sickened by food that is not whole, organic, and unprocessed. From the 4 food groups to the pyramid, the food pyramid, to the 12 pyramids. Go back to ancient Egypt. There are the feds confusing everybody. Never a mention of organic, whole, unprocessed foods as a basis for healthy life. And, the power to heal belongs to the people, not to a federal agency like the Food and Drug Administration, which limits the awareness of people that food matters, that food, in fact, can be your medicine, and that your medicine can be food.
Well, why are they against people knowing this?
Well, that is a very, very important question to ask, and it leads me to, why I want to hit into this new bioweapon that the Savage Nation listeners should know about, because it's very powerful indeed in rolling back the power of government, and yet it can harm none of the American people. None of our neighbors would be harmed by this. They all have it. But, first and foremost, we do want to acknowledge the hypocrisy of the Obama White House, Michelle Obama. They're telling you low fat, no cholesterol. And what was on the White House Super Bowl menu? Bratwurst. Michael, how many calories, how much fat is in bratwurst? How much cholesterol? Which, again, we're not against, but, they would say, stay away from it. Kielbasa's? How about some cheeseburgers? Oh, yeah. That's not going to throw any of the things that Michelle doesn't want thrown at you, but it's okay. In the White House, could we have a little bit of cholesterol-laden cheese on our deep dish pizza at the White House, Michael? Yes, that's there as well. You got buffalo wings. You got German potato salad. I'm sure there's no mayo in that. And twice baked potatoes. Oh, with extra butter and sour cream, please, for me. And they talk about potato chips and pretzels. I think the last time I checked out, originally part of my 4-food group, I think it's considered junk food. But they did throw in a salad there for good measure. I wonder if it was one Michelle grew right on the White House lawns contaminated with heavy metals. Good question there. I don't know if we have the answer. But maybe that was to counterbalance the ice cream that they all enjoyed at the Super Bowl party.
Well, it's another case of do as I say, not as I do.
Why do we listen to these people telling us what to eat? And the fact is, if the American people are so weak-minded, so deficient that we need politicians and bureaucrats and first ladies to tell us how to eat, then maybe we don't deserve to be free, Michael. I mean, I hate to say that, but you wonder if we're so weak and lacking in independent thought that we need the feds to tell us what to eat. Perhaps we deserve all that the federal government is throwing at us.
I see what you mean.
So this brings me back to the bioweapon. What is this power that I had found that it is contained within the entirety of the American people? All the American people have it. And it would stop cold, and that's why the federal government is dreading any knowledge or awareness of this new bioweapon.
Why do you say that?
Why do I call it a bioweapon? Because it's contained within your biology, within your very existence. And I talk about the germ theory and the law of the terrain. We acknowledge the terrain, the milieu, the environment. That's what determines health or disease. And so what is this terrain that allows the federal government to grow beyond its constitutional limitations, and how is it possible? By consent of the governed. We have given so much consent, so much power away that belongs with the states and the people that we deserve almost what we're getting. Why would we have unconstitutional government? We consent to it. So what we need to do, if the voting the bums out doesn't work and all the other stuff that we do doesn't work, we come back to that origin point of the founding of the nation. The government exists only with the consent of the governed. And give Washington, D.C. a consent deficiency disease where it is unconstitutional, withdraw your consent. Much like the movement with the 10th Amendment Center and nullification, nullify them now. Withdraw consent for things that are unconstitutional. You have it not because the Declaration of Independence gave it to you, not because the Constitution gave it to you, not because the Bill of Rights gave it to you. Your rights, my rights, our rights come from a far higher place than government. They come from that which created us all. So consent deficiency disease, that's good for America, and that's good to restore constitutional governance. Get it back to where it belongs.
Thanks for the report, Robert.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be with you as always, and I want to thank you for the opportunity. Please send the Savage Nation audience to naturalnews.com/Robert Scott Bell, and they can get a lot more there.
I'll be right back. It's the Savage Nation.
Savage.